Drop your curtain. Drop your curtain and put your dolls to bed. Oscar Wilde, a little out of context. Tomorrow is the last day of my kids' school, and we've decided that this summer we'll revisit the mothership. That is, we'll fly to California for 1 week to visit my family, then detour to Canada afterward. I get the feeling that word's gotten out, though, as communication around the kitchen has been a little stilted lately. I'm not certain, but I sense that some of the usual assembly feel unsure about the news. Some, I suspect, are insecure about what life will be like for 3 weeks without me, upon whom they project so many of their passing thoughts and play out imagined scenarios. In a world full of ears plugged with busyness or unconcern, who else will listen to and understand them but their go-to imaginary friend? I hope that some will take the opportunity to bond with each other and form more of an alliance, as, to my eyes, they effectively comprise one species, although I know that this is probably the faulty generalization of an observer. They do, after all, share one network of wasp-like burrows forged between the air molecules that edge my kitchen cabinets. During the early and middle part of the day, they look on as I go about my kitchen work. I think they look forward to meeting me during that window, in which I become their sounding board. There's one. She has a round apple-like head, lime green, plush with blooming Macintosh cheeks. Her full Muppet-like eyes, brightly protruding from twin eyelids, fix on my hand's work. This is her permanent expression, revealing her gentle disposition, yet still capable of belying her underlying sentiments. Wrestling between curiosity and misgivings about the unknown, the former wins out. What's in California? Oh, just some pretty coastline. You can walk down to the tide pools and see sea life early in the morning. There's some nice shopping areas, a busy wharf. Perhaps a little out of guilt over leaving, I decide to pull the topic into her daydream. Would you like to come with? You're small. I could probably fit you in my carry-on. Oh, I'd love to. Great. Then I'll show you around the area. I went there often with my parents when I was a kid. They'll be there too, actually. You'll like them. I don't know if they have any of you at their home, so I'm not sure whether you'd be comfortable talking with them. I get the feeling that if Dad is anyone's imaginary friend, they're all from his books. And for my mom, I'm honestly not sure. So if you want, you could just stay in my room and talk with me, and I can take you out in my backpack sometimes when we go to the beach or sightseeing. I can leave part of the zipper open so you can see out without being seen. Would you like that? Yes, thank you. And as for afterward, I've never been to Quebec before, but you can come along with me and we can run around the old city together and see things for the first time. Sound good? Yes. Her smile wanes toward bashfulness. Sometimes I wish you were real. Not knowing what would be better for her to hear, I hold my tongue. Until I sense the presence of another one peering out near the top of the cabinets. Grateful to avoid qualifying her train of thought, I turn and greet the other one. Hello, nice to see you today. You're out a bit early. Yes, she replies, her gray pearl eyes smiling out from beneath a shaggy ivory tuft. What are you making? She asks. Just some roasted potatoes. I'm cutting and oiling them, then mixing in seasonings and putting them in the oven. The outside cooks first, then the inside, so they have that nice chewy skin. After that, I'll make some split pea soup and cabbage. Are you hungry? Oh, no thank you. That looks interesting, but we don't have that kind of food where I live. Oh, what kinds of things do you have? What did you eat for breakfast? Well, we don't bite things like you do. We don't have those. I show them my teeth and they giggle. So you just breathe the nutrients? Yes, something like that. I see. Well, that sounds a lot easier than having to cook with your hands every day. I envy you a little. Two tiny mouths smile back. What have you been up to lately then, since you're not busy cooking like me? Well, sometimes we look in on other people at home who seem to want to talk to us. You know, when it's quiet. For some, it's this time of day. For others, it's quietest at night. For those people, it's especially important that we visit. I agree. A lot of people really need you. In my opinion, simply for the company and emotional health, if nothing else. You've helped me so much this year. I pray for ideas, then I look to you to coax out what's been given me. It really helps to work it out aloud. They look at each other, then at me with quiet satisfaction. I know it's in their nature to want to minister to people's creative and emotional needs. I gather I'm one of their projects, and I don't want to disillusion them with the truth. Because so long as they think I'm imaginary, they have but to invent an idea or solution for me, and it's accomplished. But as I'm not imaginary, it's of course not that simple. So again, I hold my tongue. I'm also afraid of how the revelation that they're the imaginary ones would affect them. I wouldn't like to see it dishearten them or stagnate their good work. Recently, my husband wisely reminded me of how much the creative process is a godlike act. I know that when I'm able to populate a blank page, I feel an immediate love for my creation. And so, in this case, I'm also charmed by their imitative attempt to create friends of their own. I look up and cast them a maternal smile, which ravels into a stunned gape when a bipedal cross between a lizard and a dog bursts through the washroom door into the kitchen. Clara and Jean again share a look of bemused accomplishment. Apparently their creative ambition had not stopped with inventing me. They giggle at my speechlessness. "It's okay, Knish. Gerald won't hurt us." "What? He's yours?" "I'm Knish." You could just call me Marianne, actually. It's easier for me to remember." "No, Marianne sounds kind of funny. You've always been Knish," reasons Jean. "Right, I concede." I turn to Gerald, who's already raced a couple circles around the island and is now energetically sniffing across the contents of my countertop. "Are you hungry?" Hospitality compels me to ask him. A ridiculous question, but in the moment, it's all I've got. He looks at me with the pure, transported joy with which a child regards an ice cream. "Okay, let's see what we can do." I begin to hostess. I collect some beans, rice, cauliflower, and pieces of chicken into a bowl, then place it on the table. He sits down, thanks me, then sticks his face in. While Gerald eats, I turn to question my friends. He seems nice. Good job." They beam innocently. "But he doesn't seem like he's going to be much for conversation." "We made him on a bet," explained Clara. "Thorne said he was working on making a large imaginary friend, but we were thinking we could do that too." "I see. But you should see what he made," grants Jean. Suddenly I see nothing. The kitchen goes dark. "Thorne, call off Vac," the girls called. "He's doing it again." A third member of my imaginary company emerges from his burrow, holding up a large, bright lantern that illuminates his ginger peach plush face. His large golden eyes fail to conceal thrill tainted with a little guilt, and then he quickly begins telling Vac to spit the kitchen out. Drop it," he commands. We all shudder under a seismic thud. Vac, whatever he is, has dropped it. The kitchen rattles, then rotates along its edge before settling to a standstill. The lights come back on, to Thorne's now sheepish countenance. Clara blinks away reproach with her usual sweetness, although I think not without effort. Jean looks with concern at Gerald, who remains seated at the table, but has quit his meal in stunned silence. I move toward cleaning up the mess. Weeks pass. Now I'm bobbing along through the clouds on the way to California, lost in thought and enjoying the view. I happen to glance down and see Clara, Jean, and Thorne also peering up out of my backpack at the passing clouds. Later one evening, I'm walking along the blustery Pacific Grove coastline. The rough, chilly stretch God quickened through brusque, vibrant strokes. The gradient blues flex, then extend toward turquoise, pitching foam. Against the rush of aquatic power, Jean silently peeks out of my backpack to take in the view. 2 heads, then 3, then more. They peer out, delighted. Impressions in their home, from within the thin walls partitioning their dimension from ours, play out in shifting, cut-out shapes and gentle hues, now aligning, now overlapping, now blocking one another, in a continually rolling scene change. By contrast, my ocean rumbles and flares like fireworks, dominating its vista. I slow my pace and veer off the path to set my backpack on a rock amidst the carpet of green and red ice plant. Why shouldn't I? I reason. They love it here, above all the vibrancy and among the cool, tumbling air molecules. I carefully unzip my backpack and give them a permissive smile. A little one, whose shade of lilac nearly matches the seaside daisies, steps forward. I watch her eyes brighten, then moisten as she takes in the dazzling prospect of life out of doors. She smiles back at her imaginary friend, wishing me goodbye, then leaps down and disappears into the flower bed made for her. Next, Thorn approaches the opening, leading a smaller, much more tenable vac. He's done a nice job reconfiguring him. I share in his satisfaction as, after the embarrassing kitchen incident, he'd begun peppering me with questions about domesticated versus wild animals, and some productive discussions had followed. Now, thanks to his innovator's drive for perfection, he's equipped Vac with the versatility to almost fit in among the well-mannered, pedigreed dogs being led around the oceanfront trails. "Wow, great job," I affirm, sincerely. He beams, then reminisces. "I've enjoyed our conversations. We'll see how he does. Thanks." Pet and owner step down onto a wind-polished gray rock, then head for the pebble trail. Next, Clara and Jean stand in the threshold of the backpack. I see they've done their homework before the trip and have upgraded Gerald into a respectable, albeit outdoorsy, human form. He steps up beside Jean and shakes my hand with eager gratitude to be out of his limiting world and into the comparatively riotous coastscape. He bear hugs his stiffening inventors, then jumps down with an excited call and is gone. My friends step up to Gerald's jumping-off place. "Goodbye, Kanish," they chime. "It's been so nice talking with you and helping you work out all your ideas." "Your childhood vacation place looks very beautiful, although a little wild. Thank you for showing it to us." And with that, I shook their dolls' hands, and they took their favorite place, nestled among the air molecules, this time above the jagged, prismatic coastline. I watched their delicate faces hover erratically in the wind for a moment, then bob gracefully down the beach. "Goodbye," I called. Lastly, Kay steps up to the opening and looks out. I can see that he's taken aback, having never witnessed anything like it before. I feel the blessing of the giver. Then I see his eyes wander half-heartedly over the scene, then rest on nothing. He knows. He's quiet for a long span, processing everything. You didn't see this part, but we've talked extensively and rehearsed, really, most of the material I've written this year. He's something of an archetype for me, whom many of my main characters are more or less based on, sort of a cross between a sage counselor and a fictional counterpart. Given that, I'm not surprised he's figured it out. I mean, I wasn't trying to hide it from any of them, but I can't control you, he says. Not that I aim to, but if I invented you, it follows I'd have that ability. I look at him sympathetically. You know, I'd noticed you're appearing a little more sober lately, but I wasn't sure why. How did you find out? Did you try to adjust me? Actually, yes, a little. Nothing as drastic as they did with Vac or Gerald, but I couldn't change anything. We stare at each other with quiet familiarity. I try to playfully ease out the awkwardness. "So, what were you trying to fix?" "Oh, nothing much." I was trying to be coy, but I cut it out when he deflected. He continues, "It's just that you're in the kitchen so much that I thought I could make it more inspiring for you." "Well, that's nice of you." Of course, in a way, it has been when we've all been brainstorming together. But I'm sure you meant something more. Kay angles his head down to the right, then looks up at me in his posture of confession. "Remember when Thorn's beast swallowed up the kitchen and it went dark and rattled around?" "Yes." "Did you know he'd be able to do that?" "No." I was surprised. Well, I was too. Because by that point, I'd figured out that we're the imaginary ones, not you. And so I was intrigued that an imaginary being could alter your world. So I thought I'd try it too. "I see. I'm sorry." I search his face for some evidence of emotional impact, but He's characteristically reticent. So I ask, "Are you okay with that?" "Yes. And no. First there was the shock. Then there was the free fall of disappointment. Then I got to thinking, perhaps anonymity is power, as in, if I'm not actual, then I'm also unaccountable. So, unscaffolded by convention, or even by the laws of nature, I can do just about anything. And many would envy you that," I add. Later, wandering through old Quebec City, I'm savoring getting lost, but not quite. As I'm sure some of you know, when your days are ordered in time to a clock, it's extremely therapeutic to not need to be anywhere or to be doing anything in particular. I shadow time, completely inconsequential and anonymous, drifting through a florist's narrow streets, stone stairways, and antique corridors, not responsible for anything I see. A few days later, descending back into Florida, I'm taken by the shift in perspective. I'm so used to observing the sky upward through the underside barrier of clouds that viewing them from above, as I look down toward the direction of the earth, strikes me as a surreal privilege. To tell you the truth, at this moment, I don't really want to go back. Not because there's anything amiss at home, but because I know it's going to be hard there. In case you missed it, my day job is homemaker, something that people one does it for tend to both love and resent, mainly because maintaining an orderly home often involves their cooperation. Sometimes I feel like our home simply swallows up every effort I make to clean and organize it. It's always hungry, always seeking to unravel my work into clutter and disarray. I want to groom and care for it, but it wants to wiggle loose, and sometimes it snaps at me. On a more prudent, dispassionate level, however, I know I ought to just count my blessings, brace myself, and dive in, knowing that the visceral satisfaction of problem solving will quickly crowd out any disinclination. I take up my book and resolve to enjoy this last ride down. As expected, there is an avalanche of odds and ends waiting for me to address once I touch down. But one day, I catch my breath, ready to resume business as usual. I step into the kitchen and shuffle through my recipe folder, digging for my mom's minestrone soup recipe. Got it. I stand it up on a little phone holder to reference while I work. I study for a moment, then proceed to gather my mental list of ingredients. Carrots, onions, garlic, tomatoes, basil. What did I miss? I look again. This time, my eyes meet a faintly discolored slit in the air, hovering unsupported just beyond the recipe card, with the appearance of having been sewn into the atmosphere with brighter mismatched thread. I remain for a moment, questioning its verity. Then I alight and slip past the recipe card and angle sideways into the portal, to find a cool narrow corridor with the appearance of pale colored paper arrayed with neatly cut out passageways. Except, instead of the sunlight upon cobblestone I'd so appreciated the week before, its lighting resembles a carouseling palette of pastel cards. Despite its understated breadth and coloring, it feels comfortable and bright. I wander about, not worrying about getting lost, because somehow I know that I won't. I want to thank my friend. I'm sure this is the alteration he ultimately made. Not to me, but for me. And I like it up here. I can meander, I can brainstorm, I can hide. Kay knows me better than I thought. I jostle up paper steps, whisk around neatly creased corners, and chance through archways. Arrived at the highest point, I think to look out for the first time onto my kitchen. Is this what they see? The basil leaves I just picked and set on the island animate into a spectrum of greens. The tomatoes mingle their confetti of reds. Before my eyes, the color pixels loosen and swim within the confines of what had been merely green and red. But now, in fact, every object in the kitchen whisks into chromatic flurries. I've heard of tetrachromacy, where people's eyes have additional color receptor cones, but this blows it into another dimension. I'm not sure if I'll ever look at food the same. Instead, I'll picture their millions of hues dividing and editing as I cut, mix, or peel. I guess this is a bonus feature of my friend's enlarged eyes, now gifted to me. Wait, do I have teeth? There's one. She peers out of her wasp-like burrow, forged between the air molecules nearby. Here, she'll wait out the summer, and will finish drafting all she wants to say to you until it's time to release it all in fall. And then you'll have ceased to be imaginary, haven't you? When the usual suspects will all have returned to full-time work or school, and I'll step back alone into my kitchen. Perhaps some of my small friends may return from California, or perhaps not, and perhaps I'll make some new ones as well to bounce ideas off of while I cook and tidy. Kay will come back, I'm sure of that. I'll look forward to working out some new material together. But first, I'd like all my friends and characters from the past year to come out and take a bow. There you are. Thank you. And now you, because we all want to thank you in advance for listening, because an unheard voice is no voice at all, and there are far too many of those, aren't there? And along those lines, please leave your comments for me and for each other. Let's talk again soon.